All right, what is up, guys? This is Ryan from Elevate Cyber. This is another week of This Week in Security. We'll start off with Mimecast confirms SolarWinds hack as list of security vendor victims snowball. So, that SolarWinds hack that happened, I believe it was last week, was pretty big news, and you're still hearing the kind of aftermath of it. As now it looks like some other vendors are being targeted, cybersecurity vendors, and they list some here that have came out as saying like they were targeted. You have CrowdStrike, Fidelis, FireEye, Malwarebytes, Palo Alto Networks, and Qualys being targeted by an espionage attack. Now, as far as Mimecast here, it looks like the particular attack here was their certificate was compromised, basically, and apparently the certificate in question here is what they use to connect to Microsoft 365 Exchange web services. So if you're familiar with the Microsoft 365, anything from Outlook or whatever other, I believe that's like a cloud normally, all those cloud Microsoft services, you can have Google, or not Google Docs, but Word Docs and OneNote and Excel, Outlook, all of that stuff normally runs through there. Oops. Let's go back here. So basically from there, it's talking about exfiltrating Mimecast customer information. So yeah, probably my guess is as soon as they were able to force that certificate to authenticate to the Exchange server, they had access to all their emails and all their files that were on the cloud there. So and another thing that's interesting is not all of these vendors here even use SolarWinds. Like here it says Malwarebytes does not use SolarWinds, like many of the other companies that were recently targeted. So that was kind of interesting as well to see. But yeah, some of them were targeted via email as well. So yeah, that's this seems to be pretty big news here lately with the SolarWinds. So thought we cover that. And this is one that I wanted to cover this because I know a lot of people out there have WordPress sites. I would still recommend WordPress, but just know when you use it, you got to be really careful on what plugins you use, because a lot of people, especially security people, they'll be pretty skeptical of even touching WordPress, right? Because historically there's been so many vulnerabilities with it, and pretty critical ones. Like we're talking code execution, all kinds of stuff like that. However, as long as you know what you're using as far as your plugins, and you make sure that the plugins you use are not vulnerable, then you'll be completely fine. But yeah, it's good to keep track of things like this in case you're using anything that might be vulnerable. In this case, you have a pop-up builder plugin that is vulnerable, and not vulnerable in the sense of RCE. It sounds like more so the case of attackers can send out custom newsletters and delete your newsletter subscribers, which could be a pretty big deal depending on what your WordPress site is used for. And certainly you don't want an attacker to be able to create malicious custom newsletters on your site, right? That could get you into some legal problems, I would imagine. And so in particular, if you guys are interested, this one comes from a lack of authorization in the AJAX methods. So that's basically asynchronous, the JavaScript stuff that can update pages in real time. That's basically what the AJAX technology is. It's an acronym, I do believe. But if we move along here, here's another one. We talk a lot on this channel about nation state threat actors, and how really this is the modern day warfare that you're seeing, and you will continue to see, are these accounts of countries attacking other countries, or even the global internet, right? In cyberspace. So this is one such example. And also because I know a lot of you guys that follow my stuff probably do a lot of your own research, hopefully, as far as, learning this stuff, learning security. And this article shows why you might want to be a little bit careful about where you learned from, what sort of resources you use out there. Because, the internet is vast. There's a lot of resources out there, but this article talks about how North Korean hackers are actually building fake personas on social networks, and particularly they call out Twitter as they've created fake Twitter profiles. Of course, all you guys that are in this space know that Twitter is one of the most popular social media platforms for cybersecurity news and cybersecurity, like the newest vulnerabilities. If you want to find out about the newest tools, vulnerabilities, stuff like that, the cutting edge stuff that's happening in the space, Twitter is normally the platform you can go to for that. And to that end, they're creating these fake Twitter profiles, and they're actually writing blogs on existing vulnerabilities to sort of fake their persona as them being a security researcher. So be careful who you're following, right? And so what they're doing from here, after they build a little credibility with these fake accounts, they're establishing contact with other security researchers out there, and they're actually able to infect their computers because they're literally using 0-day vulnerabilities to do this, right? So you could be following everything to a T security-wise, having your systems up-to-date patched, and using safe passwords, like everything we talk about. You could be completely responsible on the internet. However, just going to Twitter, trying to learn, trying to level up your game, if you are you could come in contact with one of these guys and they can hack your system because they know of a 0-day exploit that the general public doesn't even know about. So you're vulnerable, and there's no way for you to not be vulnerable. You just have to not click on their link or whatever they do, or not even that, right? As long as they have some info on your system, they can pop your box in some cases, right? So yeah, you got to be careful. In other words, who you... especially if you're downloading stuff, that goes without saying. Yeah, I mean, in some cases, it could be as simple as they get your IP address and they're able to hit you with the 0-day. But in the case of this, it looks like there was some social engineering involved. But even still, right? These social engineering attacks, it's easy to gloss over information like this. Like, oh yeah, social engineering, so that's on them because they clicked on something they shouldn't have. But here's the thing, in reality, it is extremely, especially if you're talking nation state actor, like a nation state actor, their social engineering attack is going to be top notch. Like, you're not going to be able to tell that this is malicious, right? It's going to look very, very believable, very realistic. And so you got to be, I could tell you got to be careful, but let's be honest. If North Korea or someone wanted to target me or you, they'd probably get us. But for this particular news article, it's just good to be aware that this is going on, so that you can be a little bit more critical on the people you follow on Twitter, I suppose. And good luck to you guys there. So we're just moving on here, and we'll go to this article here. And, Apple, generally, they are pretty good on their security and really keeping things, patched and things like that. But, 0 days are happening all the time. We just talked about a 0-day in the last article. Now there's another one that was quietly patched, apparently, from Apple here on the iOS 14 update. This is also a good example to show you guys why, even though you might be busy on your phone when that update thing comes up and says, would you like to update now? You don't want to be deferring that for too long, because sometimes these iOS updates bring critical patches of security flaws and stuff like that. So definitely good to keep your devices up to date as always. Don't go too long without updating your stuff, because that just puts you at more risk. And yeah, you can do simple scans of the internet to find technologies that are running out of date stuff and just automatically hack them if you write malware for it. So just keep that in mind. Don't even think like, oh, an attacker won't think to look at my system. Well, he might use something like a search engine to discover your device on the internet as not being up to date, and then just auto point his tool. His tool might do that automatically. An attacker might not even have to do that manually. His malware might automatically scan the internet and find your device because it's unpatched and then exploit it. Now, that's not going to be the case in the case of this particular security flaw, but I'm just saying that is stuff that goes on all the time. With this one, they talk about a zero-click exploit related to Apple iMessage. Basically, you get around some security protections. And the other article I wanted to cover here was more of the same with the APT threat actors here. It's a Lebanese one, possibly with links to Hezbollah. Breached 250 servers worldwide. And need I say more, right? Like this kind of stuff is on the rise. It's not going anywhere. Even, these servers included, ones from the US, the UK, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine. And so basically just stealing information and stuff like that. Didn't go too in depth on what exactly they went after in this case. But really interesting on how they did it, right? They did not a 0 day, but a 1 day, like literally a vulnerability that, that same day it was discovered and made publicly available. They immediately, because here's the thing too, right? You don't have to just, as an attacker, you don't have to just target 0 days and no 0 days, right? If you can get a 1 day, meaning this is the first day it came out, right? It's publicly known on the internet. This vulnerability is now, there's a CVE for it. You can Google the information and find it publicly. And if you can write an exploit for that information, maybe you need to reverse engineer it a little bit, write your own exploit for that. You scan the internet because this is the first day this came out. Most likely, most companies will not have applied the patch yet, will not have applied the mitigation they need to protect themselves from this, because this is literally 1 day out in the public. Normally, companies are a little bit slow. They got their patch management normally if they're doing everything right, but even still, it's not going to be instantaneous, right? This thing's only been out 1 day. So then you have, you can scan the internet, find a bunch of devices that, your, servers, whatever, that have not patched themselves to your particular vulnerability you're looking for and that are running that technology. And then you just automatically, you have your malware just take them over, right? And that's basically what they did here. Basically had to do something with a JSP file that they modified with a unique string. And then they deployed, and they basically use that, I guess, to connect to their command and control server or something. Like, they talk about a remote access tool here, and a web shell. So basically install the files on the vulnerable. In this case, the technology in question was Atlassian Jira, which is what people use to log issues and stuff like that. And Oracle 10G server. So basically, they scan the internet, look for these Atlassian Jira, Oracle 10G servers that were of a certain version, not patched to account for this 1 day here. And then they can just automatically fire their exploit off at it and, modify that JSP file, do all the stuff they need to do to get a shell on the system. And really as simple as that, really. So that is pretty much all I had for this week. Some pretty interesting information and pretty cool to talk through some of this stuff. Some of these attacks are pretty neat, really. Even though it is kind of dreadful news, right? People getting hacked and stuff, that's certainly not good. But yeah, interesting to see just how, even though you see new attacks every week, every day, whatever, right? A lot of the core concepts behind how the attackers do it is the same. So that's one thing I want you guys to start picking up on here. If you want to get plugged into the space, to see that commonality, how like the methodology of the attacker, right, is pretty much the same, as a constant throughout, right? Like you get information, you do information gathering on your target, right? What does that mean for you? Does that mean, maybe you do a social engineering attack, so you have to do research on your individual, your target, like find out how you can get him to click on your malicious link, right? Or maybe you scan the internet for servers that are running this out-of-date version of this software that's vulnerable to this critical vulnerability, right? You do your information gathering. And then, the exploitation comes after you do that, after you do all of your enumeration and everything like that. So if you're taking OSCP, doing CTFs, whatever the case may be, you'll use this methodology, but then you'll see attackers using basically a modified version of essentially the same methodology. And so, and even on the job, you'll be using pretty much the same methodology. So really good to be aware of this stuff. So hopefully these videos are helpful for you guys. If so, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and hit the like button to help get the message out there. And I will see you guys in the next video.